Halimah, and today's lecture is lecture number two, and the title of the lecture is Interpreting as Translation. Okay, now, by the end of this lecture, as usual, you should ask yourself, can I define translation? Can I discuss that interpreting could adapt translation theoretical framework? In other words, by the end of this lecture, you should have an idea about the relationship between really interpreting and translation, and you will have an idea whether interpreting could adapt the translation framework. And we will have some practice at the end of the lecture, inshallah, and you will have some exercises to take home with you. Okay, interpreting as translation. You remember in lecture number one, we talked about, whether interpreting was a type of translation or not. We said, okay, it is like translation, but it's different from translation. It's a special form of translation. This is what we agreed on in lecture number one, and we said, okay, what makes interpreting different from translation is its immediacy, and it is here and now. So today we will see that some scholars, or tend to define and characterize, their object according to their aims and experiences and interests. As for translation, several definitions have been identified. I mean, people look at translation really from different perspectives. And I'm sure you studied the theory of translation and creative translation. So we looked at translation as a process, as a product, as a combination of process and product. So we will go through some of the definitions of translation, and then we will relate these definitions to the concept of interpreting. Can we adopt, or can we adapt the translation framework to the interpreting framework or not? So one of the definitions of translation is that translation is a process. Translation as a process by which a spoken or written utterance takes place in one language, which is intended or presumed to convey the same meaning as a previously existing utterance in another language. So, what do we mean by this? We mean this definition introduces the relationship between the source and the target utterances, and stipulates that sameness of meaning is as an essential ingredient. In other words, this definition takes meaning as significant as important factor in translation. So, if you want to, it is a process of transferring one text or one utterance in one language into another text and utterance in another language, but it should have the same meaning. The same meaning, sameness of meaning. So the meaning of تعالى إلى هنا, the same as the meaning of come here. This is a process. So translating a text from Arabic into English, conveying the same meaning. Not only the meanings, but also this includes human agents and attitudes in terms of intention and expression. Now, this definition of translation doesn't cover only the sameness of meaning, but also it should include human agents. It means human beings. You know, you are the translator, and you are translating from people speaking in Arabic to people speaking in English. So you have a speaker and you have a reader, and you are the translator. And you do this with you take into account the intentions of the speaker and the expression you will be used and the expectations of the reader. So this is one definition. And this definition is based on the concept of translation as a process. It is a process. A process goes in the mind, you know, in the mind of the translator. A. Now, B. Some people define a translation as the transfer of thought and ideas from one language to another. I mean, from the source language to the target language. Whether the language are in written or oral form, or whether one or both languages are based on sign. You know? So, another definition of translation is the transfer of thought and ideas from one language, the source language, to the target language. So this definition is really focusing on the process of transfer, acting on what? On ideas. Ideas in the medium of language. So you have an idea, you want to transfer it into English, you use language, and then the interpreter, the translator, take your idea and put this idea in English. So ideas and thoughts are more important than other things, according to this definition. So definition A focuses on the transfer of meanings, mainly. Another definition focuses on the transfer of thoughts and ideas from the source language to the target language. Okay. C, another type of translation definitions. A situation-related and function-oriented complex series of acts for the production of a target text intended for addressees in another cultural language on the basis of a given source text. Now, this definition introduces a number of descriptive features such as situation, function, text, culture, and stresses the target orientation of the translation of a product. In other words, this type of definition takes into account the situation of the translation and the function of the text. In other words, takes into account the when the translator tries to produce a text into English, then he should take into account the situation of the text and the function of the text in Arabic, and he should take into account the culture and the language. He should take into account all those who are those who are involved in this process of translation, like the addressees. The addressees, I mean the people who would read your translation, and the target language, the target people, the target culture, the target situation, and the function and the function of the text into account. So when you are talking about translation, is mainly situation related and function related series of acts, which involves translating language, culture, situation, function of the text from source language into, situation, function, addressees, and orientation of the text into another language, which is English. So this is the third type of definition of translation. Bear in mind and stay with me. Why? Because we will relate all these definitions to the concept of interpreting. Can we apply these definitions? Can we apply these concepts to interpreting? Okay? Now we have another one, and then we will see whether we can really take all these definitions and see whether are they applicable to the concept of interpreting. Because as you know now, interpreting is different from translation. It's a different, it's a special form of translation. Now number four, Tori says, any utterance which is presented or regarded as a translation within a culture on no matter what grounds. He thinks translation is any utterance within a culture. So he's mainly focusing on any utterance, any verbal utterance spoken in any culture, in any language. It is considered as a translation. Look, the target orientation is carried to the extreme in this definition, in which the theorist relinquishes any prescriptive authority and accepts as translation whatever is treated as such in a given community. So really, he is considering any utterance, any text, in a community or in a language or in a culture, is considered as a translation. So he is focusing on utterances here. Now we have 4 definitions: as a process, as thought and ideas, and translation as situation related and function related, and here as utterances, in a certain culture. Now, the question we need to ask ourselves, can we adapt this framework to interpreting? Let's see. Now, it seems all 4 definitions, accommodate interpreting. Accommodate interpreting, it means accept interpreting or can cater for interpreting, can embrace interpreting. But each of them introduces 4 grounds, introduces a different conceptual dimension. Each one of them foreground, it means to put forward a certain conceptual dimension. In other words, definition number 1 focuses on the sameness of meaning as a process. Definition B focuses on translation of thoughts and ideas. Definition number C focuses on translation as situation related and function related. The definition number 4, focuses on utterance in any language or in any culture or in any language. So all these can accommodate interpreting. Now, whatever characteristic, whatever feature that translation might have, like transfer, ideas, sameness, intention, or culture will carry over to our definition of interpreting. This is very, very important. Very important. Please. Important not only for the exam, but for your understanding as well of the concept of interpreting. So now we have these four notions of translation, which are transfer, ideas, sameness, intention. These four notions we can carry over, we can use, we can utilize, we can borrow, and use them to our definition of interpreting. You know, because there is a strong relationship between interpreting and translation. Okay. Translation is an activity consisting mainly in the production of utterances, texts which are presumed to have a similar meaning and or effect as previously existing utterances in another language and culture. This is the definition of translation. It is an activity which consists of production of utterances or text, which have meanings and effect in one language, and they have the same meaning and effect in another language. Really, language and culture. Always make sure that you connect language and culture and thought. Really, thought, language and culture interact together, and then you process the information through all these three elements of your mind to produce what you are supposed to produce, whether verbally or in writing. Remember, thought, language, culture, they stay here in your mind. And when you want to produce anything, whether it is in Arabic or in English or in spoken or in written manner, you need to refer to your computer, which consists of these three elements: language, culture, and thought. And you consult them. They interact, and they say, okay, is it the right expression I'm going to produce? Is it the right thing I'm going to do? You consult them, and then your mind produces them with the final consultation of your heart. So mind and heart work together along with your computer here, thought, culture, and language, you know. So this is very important to understand and appreciate. It's a very good point now I have given you. Don't ask me, it is not on the slides. If I bring it in the exam, you are required to study the slides and listen to the lectures. You know? So it's what is required not only in the slides, what is required in the exam as well. If you are interested in the exam only, whatever I say is required. So you better listen to me very carefully. Everything I say in the lecture, you know, is required in the exam. So I hope it is clear now. Okay. So now these terms can be adapted and refined in different ways. You know, the terms like sameness of meaning and what we say, excuse me, sameness of meaning and sameness of meaning, and then transfer of ideas and intention and culture. All these ideas, it says here, we can adapt into interpreting. Listen, look. Now the notion of activity, for instance, translation is an activity, okay? We can adapt it, could be specified as service. Interpreting is a service, possibly qualified as professional service. interpreting is a professional service for the purpose of enabling communication. A service, what is it used for? For communication between some people here, some people there, and you are here as an interpreter. You are a professional. You are giving us a service, a professional service, to do what? To enable communication between these people and those people by your service, and for the benefit of clients and users or users. So why are you using this professional service? To facilitate communication between, these people, users, clients, and those people who don't know the language of those people. So you are acting like a professional interpreter. You are giving us a service. So similarly, we could specify production and communication as taking place in a given situation and culture, and we could elaborate and differentiate such key concepts as culture, language, utterance, and meaning. So what we are trying to say here, that really we can adapt the major elements of translation, or the major notions of translation, like a process, like sameness of meaning, like transfer of ideas and thoughts, like transfer of culture and language and other elements, into interpreting. In other words, interpreting involves communication between one group of students, one group of people, and to another group with another group of people. They don't know the language. They don't know. They have different languages, and you want to use English as a medium of interpreting. Your interpreting is trying to give a professional service, which is really trying to achieve communication between this group of people and those group of people. In this case, how you are going to achieve your job, you need to really make sure that you are using the process of transferring the same meanings of this utterance into the same meaning of that utterance. You need to really make sure that you are using the same ideas, using the same thoughts of these people into another people in a communicative manner, so that you achieve the purpose, the purpose required. The style, the situation, the culture, the language, you do your best to achieve. I know it is not easy, but this is the ultimatum. This is the ideal objective you need to really work towards, So, so this is interpreting. I mean, so interpreting could have the following key areas of theoretical framework. The scope of interpreting. Interpreter's task, mainly production. So one of the key element in interpret is to be able to produce. You can't just keep quiet. You can't just write. You need to produce. Production. The perspective on the translation process, target-oriented production rather than source-dependent transfer and. The normative specification of the translation product, the assumption of similarity in meaning or effect. So in this case, you need to interpreting. You need to consider on ideas. You need to consider on the target more than really the source text. So and you need to try to achieve similarity in meaning and effect as much as possible, taking into account, of course, the situation and the culture and the language of the source text and the target text. Okay, now this is an example. interpret the following into Arabic quickly. Now what you have to think of, you have to think of the situation, you have to think of the ideas, the meaning, and the culture. Situation, ideas, meanings, culture. Always. I graduated with a science degree in the mid-80s. Then I was unemployed for a couple of years. تخرجت في منتصف الثمانينات بدرجة جامعية تخصص علوم. ثم بقيت عاطلا على العمل سنتين من الزمن. Notice that I really interpreting, you know, I would say, I mean, to be on the safe side, I'll try to start really literal. One, I mean, it depends on how good you are really, but because you want to listen to what the other person is saying, you need to catch and start translating right away from the subject, verb, object, and so on. In Arabic, we start تخرجت. In Arabic, we start with the verb. In English, they start with the subject. In interpreting, to be honest, there is no harm. I mean, they wouldn't really say, oh, you started with a verb, or you started with the subject. No, you should have started with a verb. No, in interpreting, because of the time pressure, because of the situation, because of the here and now, because of the immediacy of the interpreting, don't worry about these things. Just focus on meaning, ideas, culture, situation. This is what you need to know. The idea, the meaning, the situation, the culture. The style is the last, because you need a lot of experience to become really that good. You know, a lot of experience. But you can do it. You can do it if you practice. It was pretty grim at that time, living in a squat in Peckham with absolutely no money. Now you need to really understand the word squat. You need to understand the word Peckham, and Peckham is an area in London. A squat is a place uninhabited. In other words, if you go to a building here, there are plenty of empty buildings. But here in Saudi Arabia, you cannot just jump into that building. You break the door and you say, okay, I'm going to live in this house because it's been vacant for months and there is nobody in this house. You cannot do that here. But in Britain, there was, and I think there is still this culture of squatting. Squatting is if you leave your house there in Britain or in America, I think, but I know what I know is in Britain. If you leave your house vacant for really 6 months, for instance, or 1 month or 2 months, and then some squatters know about your house, you know, especially in certain areas in London or in Manchester or in these big cities, a group of students, a group of people will say, all right, well, I mean, we don't have any place to live in. Okay, we'll break in and live in it. Now, you as an owner, you cannot really drag them out of the house. You cannot. You need to bring in the police. Oh dear, it's a long process. It's really a very, very bad situation. I wouldn't really wish it for anyone. So this is the concept of squatting, or the culture of squatting. Here, it seems that this guy must have lived in a squat in Peckham with no money. I mean, squatters are very poor, and the students, they don't have money to rent houses and so on. So how are you going to interpret this right away if you don't know the meaning of squat? You know? So it was pretty grim that time that time living in a squat. كان وقتا مجهما وكان وقتا بائسا عندما كنت أعيش في باكم في بيت مهجور بدون أي نقود معي. You got the message now, you know. So this is just an example. Another example, interpret into Arabic. انتقل رجل مع زوجته إلى منزل جديد. A man moved into a new house with his wife. وفي صبيحة اليوم الأول وبينما يتناولان وجبة الإفطار. In the next day morning, while they were having breakfast together, the wife said to him, pointing at the window that overlooks the garden of next door neighbor. You know, this is interpreting. I'm looking and interpret to you. This is consecutive translation. You look at it and you interpret right away. Simultaneous means you speak and you interpret. So I've done both for you now, and I've given you examples. So these exercises are the completion of the other stories. So you carry on interpreting from English into Arabic in your own way, and again, this is the completion of the story, the Arabic exercise. You know, interpreting, my advice to you really is to practice it, whether on your own or with a colleague or with a friend. You know, you bring, for instance, these sentences, you put them together in front of you and you interpret right away. Start right away and see what can you do. Can you do it? How many times? How long does it take you to finish? Or you can bring, you know, you can create your own English language club or interpreters club. I mean, how about if you could form 2 or 3 students, you know, we say, okay, interpreters club. And then you practice. Not only you practice this, you bring sentences, exercises from the internet, from the newspapers, and you try to practice. This is my advice. And interpreting focus on meanings, ideas, situation, culture. Thank you very much indeed, and I wish you all the best, and I hope that you have enjoyed my lecture with you today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you very much, and assalamu alaikum.